Welcome everyone. My name is Chintan Patel at Microsoft Office 2019 and 365 Specialist Expert Instructor from Benoni, South Africa, and I'll be instructor for this event titled Microsoft Excel MO200 Exam Prep. So today is our last lesson. It is the final lesson for this series. I thank you for joining us in the previous sessions. It's been quite an experience trying to do this for the first time, especially on such a topic. So I do hope that you enjoyed the series. I hope you learned a lot, and hopefully you will take the exam. This is all about taking the Microsoft Excel exam, so you can get yourself the Microsoft Excel 2019 Associate Certification that is tested on Excel 2019 and Excel for Microsoft Office 365. So today is a special lesson where we will finish off by 10:30 a.m. that is South African time, or GMT +2. These are my social media channels. I post a lot on the LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter sites. I am available on the Telegram platform if you would like to contact me privately. My YouTube channel is also available here, as well as my website. This particular video will be uploaded to my YouTube channel in the next couple of days. And as I've always said throughout all my lessons, that these are the certifications we'd like to achieve. These are my certifications I have achieved, and I have forgotten one actually to put on here, but actually last week I completed the Microsoft Azure Fundamentals exam, which tests your knowledge on the Microsoft Cloud. So I did complete that last week and I did pass that, and I do hope that it is also another career path that I can get into alongside Microsoft Office. I do have some ideas, and I do wish to actually incorporate some of these certifications, Power Platform Fundamentals, Microsoft 365 Certified Fundamentals, as well as Microsoft Azure Fundamentals into some of the courses that I'd like to teach. So, but we are right now just aiming for the Microsoft Office Specialist, particularly in Excel. So these series of videos will prepare you for the Microsoft Office Specialist certification for Excel. I will be doing a video for the Microsoft Office Specialist Expert as well. Please do watch out for my social media channels. Watch out for emails if you have subscribed to them. If you'd like to subscribe to be receiving my emails, please do contact me through any of the social media channels that I have put up earlier, and I'll add you to the database. Okay, so this is what we are aiming towards. Again, for the last time, we are using Microsoft Teams. So please familiarize yourselves with the environment. Raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, or unmute your microphone and you can ask a question. You can even use the chat functionality if you'd like to say anything. And I did mention this for the last 2 weeks, but I am doing my very first international webinar very soon. It's actually going to be taking place in a few weeks' time. And this is the one that I'm talking about. It is the Microsoft Office Specialist Certifications Overview. I am going to be doing it alongside a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional MVP, Vlad Katrinescu, and we'll be talking about everything of the Microsoft Office Specialist certifications. So this was going to be incorporated in my videos over here. However, since this event is happening separately, I will be talking about everything related to this particular course, as well as all the other courses that make up that will allow you to complete the particular exams. So I'll be talking about why you should be trying to achieve the certification. I'll be giving some statistics behind that. We're talking about how you can possibly even become a Microsoft certified trainer through the Microsoft Office Specialist program. If you want to become a Microsoft Office Specialist Instructor like myself, how do we go about doing that? I'll be talking about all those particular aspects in this particular webinar. So this webinar takes place on the 13th of August 2020 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That is 4 o'clock South African time, or GMT +2. So please do attend. I'll be posting up the links in this YouTube video, so you will see the link appearing when this video is released inside the particular YouTube video. It will be available for you. I've also posted this in all of my social media channels. Okay, so please do look out for them. I have distributed them quite all over the place. And as always, we are making sure that we look at the exam objectives every time we want to try and attempt any particular exam, especially this particular course and this particular exam. It is always a good idea to familiarize yourself so then you know what we are looking at. Again, the link for this will be posted alongside the YouTube video. So you also want to just make sure that this is read carefully. So then we just don't unnecessarily study whatever is not in the exam. We just want to make sure whatever is going to appear, that should be studied. And so we've pretty much covered everything. We have covered all of these topics in the last few weeks, in the last month or so, with all the videos. And what we are going to be doing today, we are going to be looking at the calculate and transform data section, your format and modify text, and we're going to look at everything to do with static charts. So this is not pivot tables or pivot charts. These are still standard charts we are looking at when trying to get more insights through some sort of graphic in the form of a chart. Okay, so that's what the skills outline looks like. Just a reminder, that's my YouTube channel. I'll be posting the link as well of where we can access these videos. And I've been using a series of exercise files for our lessons. So this link will also be posted shortly. Actually, I can pull up this right now. So these are all the links that are available. So the exam objectives, the YouTube channel, the exercise files as well. You can just watch as if you like. You don't have to follow along, but the same link has been made available every time for the exercise files, and the Microsoft Office Specialist webinar link is also available there. So we'll be working through these videos, and hopefully we work through these videos with these exercise files, and that should prepare you well enough for the particular exam. So what are we going to be starting off with? I just want to quickly cover what we did the last time. We just looked at everything to do with tables. Right, so this table object is a reporting tool that we can use, and this reporting tool gives us a lot of summary calculations. So the main part is a summary calculation that happens in the total row at the bottom. However, you do have some great formatting options. You have the ability to name your tables. You have the ability to apply a certain table style. We can do sorting and filtering with the arrows available at the top next to all of your headings. When we scroll down, we see that our headings have been frozen at the top, so it allows us to see our data quite easily. When I added in another column, it automatically formatted this for me. It automatically did a calculation for me all the way down. So all I had to do was to do a calculation by saying E6 times F6, which gave me G6. And as soon as I completed G6, it automatically filled the data all the way down. Right, so that is a great feature of your tables. It even incorporates defined names. So we don't have to automatically define the column names. It does that for us. With the total row, when I insert a total row, I just tick the box in the table design tab. And we see over here that we are able to get a total very quickly of the data above in that particular column. And we are able to choose from this drop-down arrow whatever calculation we'd like to see, whether it's an average, whether it's a maximum, whether it's a minimum. So we get very quick statistics just by choosing from this drop-down list of whatever I'd like to see over here. When I'm done, I can just switch off the total row and I'm back to my data. We also looked at advanced filtering mechanisms where I could put in more than one criteria for my data. So it should filter by a unit price of less than greater than 1,000 and more a quantity sort of more than 500. So we were able to get that particular those criteria inside, and our data filtered quite well after we did that. So that was everything to do with tables. Please do look at the previous video just to have a look at what of all the detail we covered with tables. It is a section in the exam that's covered quite a bit, especially when we have to insert a table. So inserting, we can select the data, go to the Insert tab, go to the Tables group, you click on the Table command, you choose the data that you'd like to convert to a table, and you make sure that you choose your headers, tick the box that you have headers in your data, and you just push OK. A keyboard shortcut for inserting a table very quickly is Control-T on your keyboard. Another method which I didn't mention in the previous video was that if you had any data in front of you and you'd like to convert it to a table, inside your Home tab, your Styles group, you have this drop-down called Format as Table. So what this does, it's just a shortcut to get your table in immediately with some color. So saving you the step of inserting a table, then going to table design, then going to table styles, then choosing something over here. You can instantly get a table inserted by just selecting the data format as table, and it puts in your table alongside with your formatting. So that was everything to do with tables the last time. We were also looking at, or we started with our formulas and functions. We just went through your relative, absolute, and mixed references. So we did a calculation over here where we had to say price times quantity, which gave us total sales. And then I explained the effect as we go down, how is this calculation actually happening? So we saw that as I do this calculation, I do the first one, I double click the bottom right hand corner, the green square, when I see the thin black cross, and then every result we see here is the action of relative referencing, where relative to this cell, these particular cells are being used in the calculation, and that achieves relative referencing. We saw with price inclusive of VAT, when I had to take this exclusive VAT amount times 15%, I had to make sure 15% is locked down as I click and drag down or double click the bottom right hand corner. So then we can ensure that every time I want to do this calculation, cell H2 is used. Okay, so we see that H2 has been used all the way down. We have to lock it in place. We have to use the keyboard shortcut F4. Right, so if you have a desktop size keyboard, you want to just make sure that you are of the F4 key at the top. If you're on a laptop, you might be able to push F4 on its own as well. Certain laptops require you to push the function key, which is at the bottom left-hand corner, and you have to hold that down, then push F4, and that gives you $signs inside your particular cell reference. I do not recommend that you try to type out the $signs manually. Right? You may get the wrong $sign in the particular location, and that might turn out to be incorrect. And actually, that was what we covered just after absolute referencing, was that what mixed references were all about, where I want to do a calculation where I want to see the price exclusive of that increase by 5%, and what would the result be? However, I didn't want to do the calculation manually for the other 2 years. I wanted to do the calculation for the first year. Then click and drag across using that green square at the bottom right hand corner, click and drag across and get it done automatically for the other years. We had to see that we had to freeze a certain part of that particular reference, or you want to lock it down, you want to keep it constant, you want to keep it fixed, you want to use any of those terms, which is completely okay. I had to use a mixed reference here where column I can actually move from one column to the next. So I can allow Excel to move from one column to the next. However, that particular row reference of 2 must remain locked in place. Okay, so 5% must be locked down, and we also had to make sure that this particular column over here of E had to be locked down, but the rows can change because I want to ensure that I can use every single value that I have over here. So in this calculation, I saw that I was able to accomplish that, and I get my answer. In this one here, cell J2, I was able to lock down row 2 and allow column J to be used over here, and then column K allowed to be used over here. So I do suggest that you look at the previous video. I did explain in great detail on how this effect works. It is quite a complicated section. I won't actually lie about that. It is something that it takes some time to wrap our head around because it's not a very popular option to do mixed references. We usually see absolute references, the $2 signs appearing being used quite often. That's from the data I've seen, from the people I've taught, but mixed references is also something that's available. And how to get the dollar sign at that particular position, you'd have to push the F4 button a couple of times to achieve that. So F4 not once, F4 twice maybe, F4 3 times, or F4 4 times. That would give you your desired dollar sign to appear in that particular location. So I'm not going to go through this again at the moment. We will continue with the lesson. Please do go have a look at the previous videos. What we are going to look at now inside our particular spreadsheet over here, we are going to be working with a file called company monthly sales. This company monthly sales can be found in the folder perform operations by using formulas and functions. So we will find over here your company monthly sales workbook, and what we're going to be looking at are the summary functions average, max, min, and sum. We are also going to be looking at the if function, which allows us to calculate an answer and get a close-ended answer based on some sort of question. So what are we looking at over here? We have the same data as we've always seen, but however, we now have monthly sales for this particular, for the set of products. And what I just want to do is I want to get the total sales. I'd like to get the average, the highest, and the lowest. So to get total sales, we can do a simple sum function. However, we want to make use of the auto sum where possible, because auto sum allows us to very quickly select the data, and we can then just put in the sum function, put in the equal sign, put in the set of brackets. It selects the data for us. We just have to double check that it's correct. And if we are happy with that, we can just push enter and complete it for the rest. So the sigma sign, actually let me again just change this color scheme. Might not be able to see the auto sum when it is in this particular theme, right? So in our home tab, editing group, we have the sigma sign for auto sum. In our formulas tab, we also have auto sum available inside the function library group. So I can select cell P4, I can click auto sum, the sigma sign. It will select the data to the left, and we just have to verify that is correct. Yes, it is. It's the numbers that have been selected, and I push enter. I can go back to that particular cell, complete it for the rest of the cells by double-clicking at the bottom right-hand corner. So as easy as that. So if you may be required in the exam to do something like that, that is quite straightforward. With your average, same principle. We now go to the drop-down underneath the AutoSum command. We will see average available to us. The very same we will see in the editing group. We saw the AutoSum drop-down, and we see average available. So now when I place my mouse on cell Q4, I push average. What happens here is that it's selecting January all the way to December, but it's also including total sales, which is incorrect. So we need to just rectify that by changing this reference of P4 and just ending it off at 04. We're ending it off at December. We would like to see the average for the months, excluding the total sales, because we will have results skewed if we include total sales. And we just push enter. We get our average for those particular months. We double click bottom right hand corner, complete it for the rest. Excuse me. And respectively for highest and lowest, we have max and min. So we complete max, we change Q4 to 04. We get the maximum or the highest from all those months. And the lowest, again, we choose minimum. We change R4 to 04, push enter, we get the lowest amount. So quite straightforward. We just made use of the AutoSum commands over here. You may be asked to do calculations going across, like how you see over here. These values might be going downwards, and you may need to do a calculation all the way at the bottom as well. Okay, so the direction will change depending on what you get in the exam, and you would do that calculation using the AutoSum functionality. Right, so I do suggest you make use of AutoSum where possible. It is a time saver instead of trying to do it manually. If they do ask you to do something specific, then you may be asked to put it in manually. Okay, but that will come at the time of the exam when you need to attempt that particular question. The next part we see here is this question over here. We are asking this particular workbook, have each of these products over here met the total sales target of 500,000 Rand. So what we want to see for each of these products here, just a simple answer, yes or no, that will evaluate this particular total column, see which values are higher than 500,000. If any of these values are higher than 500,000, we will see a yes appearing. So a particular word called yes appearing there, or a particular word called no if it's not meeting this target of 500,000. Okay, so the if function can start off to look very easy. Right, so just a bit of some notes over here. The if function, what are we really testing? If we could really put this in words, if this, then that, else that. Right, so what is the this portion inside the if function? Right, so we are assessing a criteria. Right, so the if function states that we are assessing a criteria. If the criteria is met, then display an answer. If the criteria is not met, then display the other answer. Right, if this, then that, else that. And how do I know, well, how to get something appearing as a criteria? Because when we see the if function is as follows. We have something called logical test, and then we have something called value if true, and then we have value if false. And so that can even be verified when we do equals if. We will see those particular values, and as a matter of fact, these values over here are placed in square brackets. Anything in square brackets is optional, so if you leave it out, it may change your value, or you may have to include it to display it in a certain way. So in Excel, when we see this particular word logical test, that just means what is the criteria. And how do we look at a criteria in Excel? It will usually be using two cells. Right? So I'm just going to use an example here of A1 and B1. So in between A1 and B1, we may have to use any of the comparison operator symbols. So it can be any one of these symbols actually. Right, so I'll just list them over here. Okay, so what we have here, we see that A1 is less than B1, or A1 is greater than B1. A1 is less than or equal to B1. A1 is greater than or equal to B1. A1 is equal to B1, or A1 is not equal to B1. So your criteria will always be in a form like this. Right? So you could use self-references. We can even use explicit criteria. So explicit means that in place of, say, something on the left or something on the right, we specify a value straight away. Okay, so we can choose a cell reference. It might be easier because then you can change the values as you like, but the cell references don't change at all. So we have these particular this particular notation, and this would define a certain criteria. But again, how do I know what will my criteria be? That will be dependent on the question. Our question over here is the total sales target of 500,000 met with a question mark. So we want to see if something has met 500,000. So looking at our first example, we want to see here, has P4 met the criteria of Rand 500,000? So that's what we currently have. So we need to identify keywords here. It's very important, and the clues are in the keywords here. When we see met, a word such as met, what can met possibly mean? Met could mean that we have reached a certain point. We are at that particular point, or we are coming to that particular point. So in the exam, they may confuse you with certain words that are synonyms of met. So there's just so many examples, so many words they can use, but examples of other words they can use things like exceeded. They could use things like greater than or equal to, as simple as that. So you just have to pick out those particular keywords, and that keyword will tell you which symbol you have to use over here. So P4, when we refer to met, P4 will be greater than or equal to 500,000. Now, a lot may be, a lot of this can be subjective. Your definition of met might not agree with mine, right? So we may have, instead of greater than or equal to, it could be greater than only. It is very tricky, so I can't really tell you that met will always be greater than or equal to. There are a lot of interpretations for met, right? But you will need to read up your definitions of the words, right? And from experience, you'll also be told what the word met actually means. My opinion, or whatever I'm using here, I'm using met in the sense where it is greater than or equal to. If it was something like exceeded, then something exceeding something else wouldn't necessarily include the value. We wouldn't say 500,000 Rand or more, for example. Okay, so it will just be greater than 500,000 Rand. So over here, greater than or equal to 500,000, that is our criteria. And then value if true, value if false just means what would you like to display if the criteria is met? So we can use quotation marks and use the word yes. We could even use quotation marks and use the value no. We could even make this a completely different calculation to do. So if it is met, then do this calculation, otherwise do that calculation. We can choose whatever we like to put in here. Okay, so it's recommended, just for the sake of reading very clearly, that you place both values here. There are a lot of examples you'll see on the net, on the internet, that they may exclude this here, right? It just gets a bit confusing. It also seems like the function is incomplete. The reason they're excluding it, if you see in other videos, is that because of the square brackets over here. The square brackets means it's optional. We don't have to put something over here. Okay, but that's completely up to you. Over here, I prefer keeping it to something so we can easily understand what we're referring to. So let us try and build this over here. Cell U4, and we start off with equals. We have if, open brackets, the logical test being take this value of P4 and check if it is greater than 500,000. We don't need to put the rand symbol. We don't need to put commas. We just put the number as it is. We separate it using the comma or the semicolon, depending on what your syntax says. So there's a little white box here. If your white box after the word logical test has a comma, please use a comma. If it has semicolon, use a semicolon. Value if true, what must be displayed? We want quotation mark yes. If it is not met, then write the word no. Close your brackets, push enter. Yes, the first one is being met. We can see 626,064 is greater than 500,000. Let us complete it for the rest. Click and drag down. All right, so clicking and dragging down will complete it for us. And it's always a good idea to just double check, is this working the way it should be working? We can see one no here. Yes, we can see 437,482 is not larger than 500,000. So this has not been met. So in the exam, they'll ask you to do a calculation like this using the if function. They will put it in the form of keywords like this, or just a phrase or of some sort, very short sentence with a little question mark. Do a calculation to see if this is being met or this has been exceeded, etc. There's just so many different combinations of words you can possibly look at. That's in the if function. It's but in this, at this particular level here, it will probably be as simple as this. I can't say what will come out in the exam, but in the next version of the Excel exam, it does get trickier. So at this point, we're just assessing a particular criteria, just one criteria, and we are getting back two answers, something that is favorable, something that is unfavorable. So this is one way to use the if function. Another way to use the if function is using conditional formatting. Conditional formatting does have the if function technically built in when we want to highlight a certain range of cells based on a criteria. So under conditional formatting, you highlight cell rules. These highlight cell rules could refer to be using the if function as well. So if this value is greater than a certain value, then highlight it in a certain color. So that's another way. It's not a very direct way of saying that we are using the if function, right? But it is technically using it. Right? But we are going to rather see the use of color instead of words that we'd like to display. So let's say, for example, with a column P here, from P4, Control Shift and down, all the way down to P580, I wanted to assess the same criteria, which values are greater than 500,000. I can select the data, Home tab, Styles group, Conditional Formatting, highlight cell rules, greater than. We can have greater than or equal to. We will just have to create a new rule for that. We could have also just gone to highlight cell rules greater than, choose a value of 500,000, and you could choose a preset color from here. Go to custom format, choose a fill color of your choice, and let's apply this green fill with dark green text. Push OK. Okay, so that's using the if function, and that is all we have to know for the if function, right? Whether it is calculating it from scratch using the if function, equals if open brackets, put in your criteria, one value on the left, one value on the right, a comparison operator symbol in between. It can be greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, less than, equal to, or not equal to. And then we would specify what you'd like to see as favorable. So it could be a word, it could be a number, it could be another function. And then something which is unfavorable, which is also a word, a number, or another function. Or we can do it through conditional formatting using one of the highlight cell rules. It can even be one of the top bottom rules as well. Okay. I'll just save this and we can continue to the next section. All right, so we're looking at now the 2019 monthly sales anomalies worksheet. We're looking at the functions count, count A, and count blank. Right, so again, not very widely used, but something that may give you very quick statistical results. And in this worksheet, what do I have? Well, the first thing that will catch your eye is that some of these cells are blank, some of these cells have not applicable inside. So maybe we didn't have values for those particular products at that particular time period. Maybe we had 0 sales for those particular cells, or it could have been an error. Right? So we really don't know how many cells we have here that possibly could be not filled in. And so what we're going to be doing all the way at the bottom in rows D582, D584, and D586, we are going to calculate the following. We're going to see, first of all, how many cells have a value or a number inside. All right, so the first calculation using the count function is how many numbers do I have? And then we're going to count how many blank cells do I have inside this particular column. We are then also going to count how many cells do we have that have something inside, but excluding a blank cell. All right, so they're all different calculations. One is going to be count, one is going to be count blank, and one is going to be count A or count all. Right, so all means that even if something has a value of not applicable, it's also going to be counted in the calculation over here. So also, if we would like to do something like this, it can be something at the bottom, it can be something on the going across at the top. So looking at D582, I can just start off by saying equals count, open my brackets. I can go to the top, I can say D4, Control Shift and down. And what we will see when we try to do a Control Shift and down, this one blank cell is actually going to come in the way. The blank cell is like a wall over here. It doesn't know actually, Excel doesn't know if it should continue to the next section. And so we could technically push Control Shift down again, but we may have to do that multiple times because there's going to be multiple blank cells coming in between. So this is the one point where you probably want to click and drag all the way down. Another method to actually put it in is if you know where your starting point is and where your ending point is, you could type it in manually, D4 to D580. We'd close our brackets here. We push enter. And what does 552 tell us? It just tells us how many numbers do we have. And then we can click and drag this across to complete it for the rest. Then the total number of blank cells. So that how we do is equals count blank. Right, so when we say count blank, it says count the number of empty cells in a specified range of cells. So we all you have to do here is select the range. We saw that it's from D4 to D580. We can also click and drag down if we wanted to, and we push enter. So it's picked up that there's 14 of these blank cells in this particular column. Right, we don't have anything in those particular cells. We click and drag across, and it calculates how many blank cells we have inside here. And then the total number of cells is equals count A. Right, so count the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So this could be a combination of numbers, can be a combination of text, it can be something else altogether. So we saw that some of these cells have not applicable. I want to calculate the number of cells that have a number as well as does not applicable. Right, so that's where count A comes into the picture. So equals count A, open brackets, again from D4 to D580, close my brackets, push enter. So we see 563 cells that have a value inside. When I use the term value, value could refer to a number. It could even refer to this not applicable that we see in a couple of places. And then all we do is we click and drag this across to complete for the rest. Right, so these calculations may not seem very useful right now, right, but the total number of amounts or total numbers is something very useful. Count is used quite often. It's even available under the AutoSum command that we have. The blank cells helps us when we are trying to figure out these anomalies. That's why I renamed the worksheet to anomalies. So we can find out where are all these mistakes, how many cells do we have, so then we can correct those particular cells. So I do teach it in other videos, and I think it's also in the next lesson. Well, how do we delete these blank cells, or how do we find all the values which have a problem and we get rid of them? Okay, so it's not part of this particular lesson over here. All we have to do is we have to just know how to count numbers, how to count blank cells, and how to count all cells. Count A means count all. All means alphanumeric, if you want to put it that way. So alphanumeric combinations or text or numbers or values. Let's just rather say alphanumeric values inside a column, just numeric values only, and blank cells mean how many blank cells that we have here, right? Something that is not inside. So blank is not the same as 0, just to put it out there. If something had 0 inside, it would count it as a number. Even though Excel regards blank sometimes as a 0, if we are going to be using count blank will exclude that value of 0. So when we are working with blank cells and we want to do some calculation, please rather make use of count blank, and then don't place a 0 in there, otherwise you won't get an accurate result for count blank. Okay, so that concludes our section on count all and count blank. So I can save this, close this one here, and the next workbook I'm looking at is employee database in the same folder of perform operations by using formulas and functions. Just have a look at that here. And what are we doing here? We're doing everything with text functions. So all this time you've been seeing a lot of functions related to numbers. We're doing calculations with numbers. We're going to see now calculations with text. And it's quite a unique set of functions that we have over here. What we're going to see with the text functions, they're mostly time-saving techniques. Something that will take you ages and ages to do if you had to type it out manually, you can very quickly get it done using text functions. And we use a very popular examples of names over here because that's where it's commonly used. I've taught a lot of HR professionals and they really like this section because they always have to deal with company employees, and they have to sort out or clean up their databases, or they have to clean up even products if you're in another industry. And the words are typed out in all sorts of casing. We need to extract certain things out. We need to join things together. So that's everything we're going to look at right now. We're going to look at the right function, the left function, the mid function. As a bonus, I'm going to bring in the proper function. It is not in the exam. However, it's very much relevant here, so I do want to bring it in. We're going to look at the upper function, the lower function, the len function, concat function, and text join function. So quite a lot actually that we're looking at, but you'll see that once you do it for the first record or first row, then it automatically gets done for the rest when we double click the bottom right hand corner. Okay, so when we autofill, when we want to do relative referencing, it becomes so much easier. So what do we have here in this employee database? We see that these names on the left-hand side, or column A, have been typed out using mixed casing. So they could either have been typed out or they came from another system like that, and they look really bad. We can't be working with such names over here. So what we want to do, we just want to go through all the different ways we can display this name. So everything in uppercase, everything in lowercase, everything in proper case. So proper case means that the first letter of each word will be capitalized. Everything else will be in lowercase. But looking at uppercase first, cell B6, all I do is say equals upper UPPER. Converts a text string to all uppercase letters. So just to put out there, what does the word string here mean in this context? Well, so string is actually a word that is used mostly in programming terminology. So in IT terms or programming terms, string is a collective noun for words. Right, so you say a string of text. Strings of text can be this text over here. This is a string of text. This is a string of text. One word can also be a string. Right, so just remember that when they use the word string over here somewhere in your exam or in a question, or you come across this definition here in equals upper open brackets, you see converts a text string. So a text string can just be one word or just many, the different instances of words that we have over there. So open your brackets. All it requires us to put in is the text, which is the cell reference of A6, and a push my closing brackets, push enter. We can see now everything is in uppercase. It has taken every letter, made sure it converts it to uppercase. I can then double click the bottom right hand corner to complete it for the rest. So very quickly, I have my names all in uppercase. I didn't have to type that out. It would have taken ages to get this typed out the way it should have been typed out. Same thing with lower. In cell C6 equals lower. And open your brackets. We select cell A6 once again, close the brackets, push enter, everything is in lowercase, and then complete it for the rest. But what we may want to use more often is the proper function, because we always capitalize our names and our surnames. So equals proper, open brackets, select cell A6, we close our brackets, right, and that looks much more neater. And then we can see all the different names actually being converted to proper case, where the first letter has been capitalized for each word. So if you had a sentence, or if you had a word that had conjunctions inside, like and or, etc., those letters will also be capitalized. Right? So maybe we're not capitalizing those in our regular day-to-day use of those particular words. Now what we want to do is we want to start looking at extraction techniques. So extraction techniques refer to taking out a certain number of characters, right? Maybe you want to create your own alphanumeric instance. So you want to create, let's say, a reference number, right? This reference number needs to have a certain number of letters, a certain number of numbers, and we want to extract certain letters out. So it could be the first 3 letters, it could be the last 3 letters, and then a certain number. So we want to use extraction techniques left, right, and mid to get that out. Where we see this happen very commonly is when we want to create email addresses. So let's say, for example, you want to have a particular person's name. I'm going to use my name over here. So we may usually have an email address where we have name dot first name dot surname at company.com is just the name of the company, and .com. We might also want to have it as the name and initial of the surname at company.com. We may even want it in this particular way. Right, so how do we actually achieve this? And if I have thousands and thousands of names, I don't want to be manually typing this out. We can tell Excel to extract only the first letter and then take the surname, put it together, and put at company.com and get the rest done for me. Right. So getting the rest done for me and joining it to this, we will see in a moment, but to extract specifically, extract the C, extract the P. So we would use extraction techniques, the left function, the right function, and the mid function. Now, when I want to make use of these functions, we need to make sure that these names are appearing as values only. So in an earlier topic, we covered paste values only, right? So we were looking at a way to paste special. The reason I'm doing this is that when we do some of these calculations going forward, I want to see the name appearing as the result. Right now, we see it as a formula. Yes, we can physically see it in front of us that it's there, but in the back end, it's stored as a function. It's stored as the result of a particular function that was used. And so we want to just get the values out only. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy these names, paste it over here, so we have the answers only. So to do that, we can go D6, Control Shift and down, Control C. And if I scroll all the way to the top, I can then right click on E6 and be looking for this clipboard where it says 1, 2, 3 values only, and we paste it. So what is the difference here? You can see that cell D6 has a function, cell E6 has the answer only. Right, so we only want to use the answers because some of these calculations here that we need to do afterwards are not going to really work if we had the function showing. We need to have the value showing up only. So let's try to do this first example of the left function. So left means you want to count something from the left-hand side of a text string. So left would be starting at the letter E for Eric. So it's asking us here first 3 chars, right? So chars again is a programming term or programming terminology. Chars refers to characters. It's just an abbreviation. You may see char in certain places if you're looking at programming. So char just means character. So chars here, characters, first 3 characters from the left-hand side. So cell F6 equals left. As simple as that, L-E-F-T for left. And it says here, returns a specified number of characters from the start of a text string. So start would mean from the left-hand side as well. So we can open our brackets here. And there are 2 requirements here. We specify the text, which is sitting inside cell E6. And then it's asking us how many number of characters would you like to extract from the left-hand side. Plus, it is also in square brackets. So if we leave it out, it will do something else altogether. So let me first show you if I leave number of characters out, what happens. By default, it will return the first letter only. Right, so if I left out numchars, it only extracts the letter E or the first character. I could technically even say E6 and then 1 for the number of characters. I'd get the same answer. Right, but leaving out the second portion will default to just 1 character extracted. But we want the first 3 characters, so we specify 3. It is number of characters, so you have to put a number, nothing else other than a number. When we push enter, we will see that ERI is extracted from the left-hand side. And all I do then, bottom right-hand corner, I double click. We will see the first 3 characters for the names in column E will be extracted. So right now it may seem like this seems so pointless. Why would I want to do this? Well, we are extracting different characters, and eventually at some point we may want to join it to something else. So I've seen certain email addresses that have the first three characters and then the last three characters and then a number. So after the extraction is done, then we join the results together to create something new. We may want to create a product number like that. We may want to create an SKU like that, a reference number like that, an employee ID like that. So all these employee IDs that we see, or all the staff numbers, the student numbers, where we have a certain letter inside somewhere, a certain number, it is possible that they all existed in an Excel spreadsheet, all the data for all the different individuals, and they used extraction techniques and text joining techniques to create that brand new email address, to create that brand new staff ID, student ID, etc. Right, so they may not seem very useful right now on its own, but they will be useful when we want to do the calculation right at the end. So column G, the write function, so equals write. So what does that actually tell us here? Returns a specified number of characters from the end of a text string, so from all the way to the end. So let's open the brackets. We select our text, E6, 3 characters from the right, push the closing brackets, push enter. So we will still see that it's not reading backwards. We won't see SER showing up, but rather RES. So the text is still being read from left to right. It's just last 3 characters. We complete it for the rest, and it's done for us. We then have another function called mid, and mid means from the middle. So how do I know what the middle is? Because middle can be something completely different for all these names over here. We don't necessarily have an even number of characters. So what would middle actually mean here? So the requirements for the mid function, we have an extra requirement here, equals mid. So returns the characters from the middle of a text string given a starting position and length. So the middle will be defined at where you'd like to start the counting. So first of all, we select the text E6. Then we have to specify our start num. It is a required field. So from where would we like to start? It says here we want to extract the first 5 characters starting at the 3rd character. So if we were to look at the word Eric here, Eric Torres, we see ERI. So we want to start at the letter I, the 3rd character. So we say 3. Number of characters here is now a requirement. It's no longer optional. So we want to extract 5 characters from the 3rd character. So from the letter I, so I is included, we want to count 5 characters to the right-hand side. So we can put the value of 5 there. We can close our brackets, push enter. We will see that we have I, C, and then the blank space is also included. So you just have to remember that it's something that we may miss out. A blank or a space, let me rather put it this way, a space is also a character, right? So it's not excluded by default. It's not excluded in any way. Space will be counted as a character. So IC is 1, 2, space is 3, T is 4, and O is 5. And it will keep the casing as it is. We complete it for the rest. We will see how it actually extracts according to this rule, starting at the 3rd character, extracting 5 characters. So when it's extracting 5, it's now doing it from the left-hand side. It's not doing it from the right-hand side. Okay, we can see some interesting combinations over here. If I wanted this all in lowercase, I would have to do a combination of lower and mid together. So whatever the results of the mid function, whatever the results are, it would then automatically convert that to lowercase if we wanted that. Okay, so that's your left, right, and mid extraction techniques. We're now looking at the len function. So the len function is very straightforward. It's a very straightforward function. Equals len. Right, just counts the number of characters in a text string. Right, so just number of characters inside the full name. Right, so we are looking at the full name column once again, and we're going to look at column E for that. So we just want to see how many characters we have over here, including the space. Right, so remember, space will be included by default. We can't exclude the space over here. So in cell I6, we have equals len, open our brackets, select cell E6, close your brackets, push enter. We get a number returning as 11, and we complete it for the rest. So let's just double check this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That is correct. Where is this useful? In the South African context, maybe you had a list of ID numbers, and you wanted to check if these ID numbers are 13 digits long. You would use the len function for that. If you wanted a very quick way to calculate if each of these ID numbers are indeed 13 digits or 13 numbers long, 13 characters long, because the South African ID number is 13 numbers long. Okay, so 13 characters rather. Let's use the word characters. So we could technically use the len function for that, and then when we scroll down, we might identify an anomaly. We'll see that one ID number has one digit less, and then we can deal with that specific ID number. Right, so we are now going to be looking at joining functions. Right, we have a question here. Cool. Should it include the spaces in between as well? It will include it by default. We can't change that, right? So it technically should not, right? So technically it should not be including it. If we didn't want that inclusive, I think the only way then we would have to do that is to possibly extract the first name, which we're going to do now, and extract the last name, right? And then do another calculation for that. By default, it's not going to exclude that space in between. It does know in a way, Excel does know in a way that that space might be useful for us in trying to differentiate a first name and a last name, or you're trying to differentiate the spaces in between when you have a sentence, for example, or a phrase, because we don't usually write names together. We don't have the first name and the last name put together. We have the first name, we have a space, and then we have a last name. So that space technically should be excluded. Unfortunately, it will be included over here. Cool. So what we're going to see here, we are going to separate the first name and last name in two separate columns. We are then going to create an email address out of the first name and the last name. So to do this, we did look at this in an earlier lesson where I want to extract the first name and the last name out. So I'm going to be using column E as a reference here, and the results will be appearing in column J. So I first want to select column E, so E6, Control Shift and down to E266. With that selected, I'm going to go to my Data tab. In my Data tab, the Data Tools group, I'm going to choose this command called Text to Columns. And what is Text to Columns doing for us over here? Split a single column of text into multiple columns. For example, you can separate a column full of full names into separate first and last name columns. Right, so that's exactly what we want to do. This text to columns will achieve that for us. So we're going to choose text to columns. We have the text to column wizard, and we did look at this in the earlier section, like I said, when we were talking about delimiters, the separating symbol that separates text in our cells. So we have over here a preview showing up of what the text actually looks like. We do want to separate it or we do have actually data which have delimiters inside. We can just push next here. What is the delimiter that's being used? It is not a tab that we have, but rather a space. So I did mention in an earlier lesson that tab and space are two different things, even though they are classified as spaces. A tab is a bigger jump or a bigger space. A space is a smaller jump or a smaller space. So you would use a space. To achieve a space, you push space bar. To achieve a tab, you push the tab button. So we untick or uncheck tab, and then we tick or check the space box over here. We can see the preview at the bottom. It's going to be showing up as first name on the left, last name on the right. We push next. The setting we want to change over here is the destination. We don't want it in E6, so we're going to remove E6 from the destination and rather choose J6. Now, even though we're selecting J6, we are going to see the results showing up going all the way down and even in the other column. Over here, we just push finish. Right, it says there's already data here. Do you want to replace it? We're just going to push OK, and we'll see that it will separate the first names for us. It will separate the last names for us, and it gets stored as a value. There's no formula work. There's no functions over here. So I did do this in an earlier lesson. I did it again where we converted, where we had a text string and we separated the text with the delimiter being the space into two separate columns over here. And now with two separate columns existing, we can create our email address using joining capabilities or the joining functions. Now, there's three ways. In previous versions of Excel, there were only two ways to do this because text join is a fairly new function. It's only available in the Office 365 suite where you can join text together. Before, we only had the concatenate function that joined our text strings together. However, we can also use flash fill. So I'm going to look at all three ways because you may be asked in the exam to do any one of these three. And again, they may not tell you which one to use. You have to figure out which one is the best one for you to use over here. So I'm going to go through all three, and then I'll also explain how each one works. So we also saw flash fill in an earlier example when I was talking about autofill. And flash fill is Excel's guessing capability. However, flash fill, we are going to create our pattern. So it's a pattern that we are creating, and we're going to use the capability of autofill to complete the rest all the way down. So there's no formula work here. There's no functions here. We're just typing out the data as it is. And we're hoping that Excel picks up the pattern and completes the pattern for us all the way down. We also have to bear in mind that no mistakes are allowed here. If we make a mistake, we have to start over. Otherwise, it will capture the mistakes and it will treat the mistakes as something that is correct. So in cell L6, we have to type out, excuse me, we have to type out Eric in the correct casing. So it's going to be ERIC, so that was a capital E. I have to put a dot as per my rule displayed here in cell L4. And then the last name, Torres, capital TORRES, at contoso.com. And we push enter. Now we want to see for the next one, I can push capital letter B. Right, so we see a preview showing up of what this is going to look like, but this is still incorrect. We can see that it's now saying the first name dot last name at condiso.com, and then the next one, first name dot last name at conriso.com. So it's picking up this completely different letter in the second part of the email address. So this is still incorrect. We're going to complete it slowly to remind Excel what it should actually be. At contoso.com. Then let's try the next one, capital A, All right, so now let's have a look at this pattern. Yes, it's taking alexandros.rixtins at contoso.com, rutten.potter at contoso.com, and etc. So we've seen that the correct combination is happening in the beginning before the @ symbol, the correct word appearing after the @ symbol. From here, we just push enter. It completes the rest for us. All right, I see there is a problem over here. All right, so we may have to deal with that particular one. There's even a problem over here. All right, let's try this again. See if this actually works. So where is it picking up those names? All right, so let's try this again. Eric.Torres at contoso.com, and then BAA.DI at contoso.com. Alexandres. Right, let's double check. Okay, it's only going to do a couple. Right now it's correct. Right now it's appearing the way it should be. I'm not sure what happened in the previous one, but now it's appearing correctly. So this is Flash for joining the words together, joining other characters together using just simple typing. A more accurate result will be the concat or the text join. So concat is an abbreviation or short form of concatenate, and concatenate means to join. So we're joining text strings here, including symbols if we need to include symbols. So in previous versions of Excel, you will find starting from, I think it's 2013 even, or even earlier than that, from right up to 2016, we had the word concatenate. So we had equals concatenate available to us. And the syntax was to specify your text, as many as you need to join up, and put it next to each other. So text, this word text also included your symbols. So if I were to say equals concat, I can say then J6, separate this, quotation mark, space bar, quotation mark. So space bar will give me my space to separate the first name and the last name into, to join the two together using the space, because I can't do this. Let's see, if I remove the space, if I just said first name and last name, that would be the result. And technically that's not correct because we don't look at full names like that. So we have to specify the space. We have to say quotation mark, space bar, quotation mark, and the next symbol. And we just push enter, and that actually is correct. And text join will work out better over here. Equals text join, open brackets. What is the delimiter? The delimiter is a space. So I have to specify the space using quotation mark, space bar, quotation mark. Next part of the calculation is it's asking you, do you want to ignore empty cells when concatenating? And that means if your range of cells has any blank cells, do you want the blank cells included or not? So that should Excel continue the calculation if the blank cell exists, or should you exclude it? So for what we're going to do, we're going to ignore empty cells over here. So we're just going to put the value of true. Right, we could also put the value of false. Doesn't really matter because we don't have any blank cells over here. So any one of them would be fine. And then it's asking us select the text that you'd like to use. So I want to select cell J6. And then the next part is cell K6. So this is slightly different where we had to specify to Excel the delimiter you'd like to use to join. And then afterwards, we would specify the text we'd like to use. So we can close our brackets here, push enter, and we get the same results. Why text join is something you may want to use rather than concat. So this is some extra that I'd like to show you. Concat had a limitation. Let's say you wanted to put all the first names. So let us, yeah, we're going to use this first name column over here. What if I wanted to put these first names one after the other using a comma? So something like this. What if you wanted to create Eric, Ala, Alexandros, etc. So you wanted to separate each of the words using a comma and a space. If we had to do that with concat, it would be quite a large formula, or long formula actually. So I'll just do this on the side here. So for this example, I would have to then say equals concat. I'd have to then pick Eric. I'd have to say the semicolon or comma, quotation mark, and then I have to say comma, space, close that. Then the next word would be the next name, and then quotation mark, space, comma, close that. And then the next one, you have to select that, right? And then we close our brackets. So we achieve that effect, but you can see how confusing and long this will be. I'd have to select the names one by one to actually achieve this. And there'll be so many commas, so many quotation marks, so many spaces, you get so confused with that. So what you may rather want to use is text join for this. Text join is very fancy for this, where we specify the delimiter once, and text join will allow us to select a range of cells as opposed to concat. Concat did not allow you to select starting point to ending point, but text join can. So if I had equals text join, I specify my delimiter, the quotation mark, it must be a comma and a space after each name. Close it off. I want to ignore empty cells. And then over here, this is the best part, is that I can just select my first names. I can just select J6, Control Shift and down. That selects all of these names here. So this you could not do in concat, but in text join it's possible. So we can now see from J6 to J266. I can close my brackets, push enter, and then we will see that it has created this long list for me of all the first names, one after the other, with a comma and a space. Right. So you really don't want to be using concat for that. You want to rather be using text join if we want to achieve something like this. All right, but for the sake of the exam, we just need to know your upper, proper, so upper and lower. Proper does not get tested, but you never know. It's a good idea that you know it. It's part of the same category of text functions here. Then we had to extract the left, the right, and from using the mid function also. We extracted the total number of characters with the len function. We then looked at flash fill to create an email address. And then using concat and using text join, I was able to create a full name. And then I explained as well where else is text join actually very useful. All right, so that concludes text functions. I'll save this and close it. And we have just enough time to cover the last part of our course here, which is everything to do with charts. So I'm working in another folder called Manage Charts, and I'm looking at an Excel workbook over here called Employee Performance Charts. Okay, so what are charts? Charts are visuals that we may want to insert inside our Excel spreadsheet to possibly visualize all the data that I have inside my spreadsheet over here. So I have columns of numbers, I have columns of text. I want to see performance, but I want to see graphical performance. I want to see it in the form of a line chart, a pie chart, a different type of chart altogether. It gives me a great summary view. I'm allowed to use colors. I'm allowed to use a variety of tools to make this stand out. And we usually use charts for reporting, using it for further analysis, trying to figure out how well our company did using the available data. So we're going to insert a chart based on the employees over here and the values I have with all the months, because we want to see how well did these employees perform for the respective months. So we are going to insert a chart, and there's actually a couple of ways to insert a chart. It's best you memorize all the different ways. In the exam, they may ask you to insert in a very specific way. Maybe for the sake of time, you want to use a specific method. So I'm going to go through all the different ways to insert a chart. And what we're going to do, we're going to only insert data for the first 6 months, or chart using the first 6 months, because another part of the exam is how do I include additional data without recreating the chart from the beginning. So I don't want to delete the chart and then include the next 6 months. I just want to include the extra data, and the chart must automatically adjust for me. So the first example will be creating the performance for all these employees from January to June. So the first thing you want to do is select from cell A1 to G1 all the way down to G20. I can go to insert. I can go to recommended charts. That's one method. So recommended charts is probably one of the best ways to insert a chart quickly, because Excel will tell you what is the best chart available for the data that you've selected. There's just so many combinations here, so you really don't have to waste time. What will go on the x-axis, what will go on the y-axis, what will go in the middle. Excel's really doing all the work for you. So I'm just going to choose this first recommendation, the clustered bar. I'm going to push OK, and that inserts my chart. So I'm not going to do much right now because I want to just talk about the other two ways to insert a chart. So that was the one method where we select the data, insert recommended charts. Another way is to select all the data, and then you would physically go and choose one of the charts available to you over here. So insert, so first select the data, insert charts, and then choose the one you'd like to use over here. Right, so I'm going to choose one of these ones over here, and I select that. That gets your chart inside. Right, it's not showing up because I just have to make it bigger to include all the data. The third way, which is not very obvious actually, is when you select your data, you have at the bottom right-hand corner a little icon popping up called Quick Analysis, or Control Q on your keyboard. Use the Quick Analysis tool to quickly and easily analyze your data with some of Excel's most useful tools, such as charts, color coding, and formulas. So if I choose Quick Analysis, it brings up this pop-up, which is Excel's recommendations on the data that you have selected. So Excel's recommending to me data bars that you could use, color scales, icon sets. Do you want to do greater than calculations, top 10%? We can even choose charts from here. It recommends for me the best charts available. If I want to do totals using table functionality, it does that. It will show me a possible table I can include here, or even spark lines available if you wanted to insert these inside. So this is a great way, very quick way to get certain recommendations implemented. I just want to get a chart inside, so I can choose this first one, clustered bar, and it puts it in for me. Okay, so those are three methods. It's best you try to memorize them. The two are under the Insert tab. Select the data, insert recommended charts under the Charts group, or Insert tab, one of these chart icons under the Charts group, or select the data, bottom right-hand corner, you are looking for the Quick Analysis command, or Control Q on your keyboard. So if I also went Control Q, it would pop up with this box here, and you would choose the charts category, choose clustered bar, if that's the one you want to choose, or that's the one that you're required to put in, and your chart has been inserted. So chart inserted, let us move it at the bottom here. So we have some space to work with. We want to make this bigger, so you can use the sizing controls, the diagonal sizing controls, the one's on the left, one's on the right, one's at the top and the bottom to make it slightly bigger. So we got the chart inside. We want to now start looking at what do we have available to us to make it stand out, to make it more readable, to make it more user-friendly. So when we have a chart inserted, we have two contextual menu tabs available: chart design and chart format. So design's got everything to do with the entire chart on its own. Format, you can format individual blocks here, format individual bars. You can format the background if you wanted to. So there's different ways to get this formatted. We're going to first look at chart design. So in chart design, the first thing we want to do is let's change the color or an overall chart style. So in this chart style gallery here, you want to go to the drop down and choose one of the ones available to you over here. So I'm going to pick style 7, but there's so many different chart styles available. In the exam, they may ask you to pick a specific style. So I'm going to just choose style 7. We have a darker background, and the color actually then contrasts quite well. I can, if I want to, change the color of the bars overall by using this color palette here of change colors. So if I were to mouse over some of these options here, it'll show me a preview of what I have available. So we can change this if we wanted to. I'm just going to keep it the same. We then have on the left-hand side chart layouts, a group called chart layouts, where I can add in various elements. Elements would mean that I can include different types of information that will make my chart more meaningful, or I would like to position certain parts of the chart in certain ways. So do you want to change your axes? Do you want to change axes titles? Do you want to change the chart title? Do you want to put data labels? Do you want to put data tables inside? Do you want to include a legend? So this is one way to get chart elements in. The other way to get chart elements is using this plus symbol at the top right-hand corner of your chart. So you have to click on your chart first to see this option of chart elements. And then we see the very same ones appearing in that list we saw earlier. Over here, we just tick the box what we like to see. We can even mouse over some of these and it will just show us a preview what it would look like. So if I mouse over axes titles, you'll see on the left-hand side of the chart, we have a placeholder called axes title. And actually at the bottom over here, we also have a placeholder for the axes title for the x-axis. If we wanted to, we can put in data labels. So it shows us a preview just before I click on it. It shows me a preview of the legend. Right, so we already have a legend. The legend is this area at the bottom here. Right, so this color coding mechanism to show you what each color represents. That mechanism of showing what each color represents is displayed by using a legend. It's important that you memorize what legend means. In the exam, they may not ask you to directly put in a legend. They may ask you to put it in, but they'll use different words. They'll use synonyms, or they use another way to create a sentence, and you have to know what it's actually asking you to do. So they may ask you to say, display a means of color coding the data meaningfully. That's not a real question. That's not something that I've seen, but that is just another way to just put in this legend over here. But what we want to put in is axes titles. I'm going to tick this box, axes titles. So I have placeholders put in for me. If we wanted to, we can put data labels. It just looks very messy at the moment. If we wanted to put in trend lines to see other types of, line charts within this bar chart to show extra performance. But we're not going to do that right now. We just have our placeholders put in, and we want to give this data or these placeholders some meaningful names. So what I'm going to put here as a chart title, I can simply click on the placeholder. I can start typing here employee performance per month. So where is it typing? It's typing in my formula bar at the top. I can just push enter. It puts it in for me. On the left-hand side, I have my axis title placeholder there. I can say over here, employee name, push enter, puts it in for me. At the bottom, I can put here, let's say sales. Right, and so the sales amount showing up at the bottom there. So it is quite a complete chart. Right? You may want to extend this, make it a bit longer, so we can see some of the months, or we can actually take up the entire space here. What else do we have available under chart design? We can choose quick layouts. So these are preset layouts for the way chart elements should be displayed. So I can choose between layout 1, I can choose layout 2, layout 3, 4, 5, 6. There's just so many different ways you can lay this chart out. So what is this layout? It is a combination of multiple chart elements inside one particular sort of design template, if you'd like to call that. It's called quick layout, but it's a combination. You can see in this box here, it shows you what it's doing and what it's including, what's the positioning like as well. In the exam, you may be asked to also do something like this. In the exam, you may also be asked to switch the rows and columns around. So it would be technically a transpose happening. Whatever is rows becomes columns, whatever is columns becomes rows. If I do that, we'll see now the months are appearing on the y-axis, and the names would then be appearing as the different color-coded bars over here. We still have values showing up right at the bottom, but now instead of months showing up at the bottom, we have months showing on the left-hand side. So you may be asked to do that over here. Right, so switch row and column. Then we have the ability to select data. So this is the part where I was talking about. You may be asked to include more data, and we do want to include data for the end of the year. So then select data will allow you to expand the range. So it's asking you over here to select the extra range. So there's two ways to do this. You can remove this data here that you have in the chart data range altogether, or you can simply include the particular alphabet column letter. So instead of stopping at G20, I can say include all the data up to M20, and I can just push OK. Right, let's see, what do we have here? Does the legend not switch automatically when you switch the views? Yes, it does. Right, so if we were to change this quick layout view, so when you say switch row and column, you will see the legend does change as well. So that is definitely changing. It will automatically incorporate that. If we choose a quick, let's say I switch the row and column, I can choose a quick layout, and then I can have the legend appearing on the other side if I wanted to. I can also choose this chart elements, go to legend, and on the right hand side I have this arrow showing up next to legend. I can change the position of the legend wherever I like to put it. Okay, so it will automatically change. If you do switch rows and columns, your legend values will also change over here. It's going to switch it back to what it was before with the legend. Okay, actually the legend appearing on the right looks great. So we have more data being displayed here. Right, but what I was looking at earlier, if we select the data, we include more columns, then it includes the data, and it will then expand the chart for us. And the headings on the X and Y axes, unfortunately not. Right, so the headings don't get included when we do a switch. So if I switch here, I think I should switch on axis titles. Right, so what I had earlier, let's say I had employee name here on the left, I had sales at the bottom. If I switch the row and column, your titles don't switch, unfortunately. There's one particular disadvantage. Technically, we would want to have the heading switching as well. We would have to remember to put in the correct title when we do switch the row and column. Yes, that will have to be changed manually, right? Okay, so switching rows and columns, if we, just to summarize that, if we do switch rows and columns, your legend will change. However, your axis title will not change, right? So axis title won't flip. So if you had employee name appearing on the y-axis, it's not going to go to the x-axis. If we had something on the x-axis, it's not going to appear on the y-axis, right? So that has to be changed manually. You'd have to change the axis titles manually for that. Something else that you may want to do in the chart design is change the chart type to something else. That might work out over here. All right, that is an option. So you don't have to recreate the chart. You can very easily change the chart type from just having the data already selected and your chart changes. One common task that they may ask you to do is to move the chart to another sheet or another workbook. So it says here, we would like this entire chart to be displayed in a worksheet of its own. So if I choose Move Chart, and when I click Move Chart, I'd like it to be in a new sheet, and I'd like to call this new sheet Employee Performance. So we are given the option to give it a name, and when I push OK, we'll see that this chart is then moved from Employee Performance data to this worksheet called Employee Performance, where I have the entire chart taking up the space in this particular worksheet here. Okay, that is something that's asked very commonly, to move the chart to a new worksheet. So that happens under Chart Design. In the Location group, I have the Move Chart. I can also move it back to where it was, to be an object inside Employee Performance data. And I can push OK. It deletes that worksheet, brings it back as an object, as a clickable and draggable object, where I can just click and drag, resize this, place it where I like. Inside the Format tab, we have the ability to change very specific elements. Right, so some of the elements that you may be required to change, or some of the options that are available to you, is if we were to right-click on this chart, so right-click, format the chart area right at the bottom. This is where we would usually go do the formatting. Yes, we can complete it at the top here, but what you may want to rather know for the exam is if we right-click on the chart, format chart area, there's a right-hand side pane appearing, and we have the ability to change very specific elements of the chart. So let's say you wanted to change the series of names over here. So maybe if I were to actually, let's say first switch the rows and columns around, let us select these names here. Let's say you wanted to format these names to make it slightly bold. You know, maybe you want to just make this stand out. You want to make the name stand out. So then we have the name selected. You can choose looking at your text options over here. So text options, we want to do something to the name here. We want to, let's say, change the color to something else. So let's say if I change this to red, I can change the names to red. I can make it black again. I can go to my home tab. Oh, sorry, black probably we won't be able to see. Let's make it white, and then let's make it bold. Right, so I could choose a very specific element inside my chart. I could choose something very specifically, the vertical category axis. So this vertical category axis here, and start doing formatting here. Do any other formatting over here if I wanted to. I can even change colors like that. Not very great, but gives you the ability to do that. I can change something for the plot area. So in the background, maybe you want to put another type of background, a solid fill, maybe a white background, then you can do that. So To change all these specific elements over here, you would have to right-click Format Chart Area. You would then choose the area that you'd like to format, and then you have the option for the color bucket. You have the option to put in text or effects or various background effects. You have the option to change sizes, right? You can also have the option for text only. So quite a combination. Takes quite a while to actually format it to the way you like. So you may want to just familiarize yourself how to get to that area. And the last thing with charts that we look at over here is the ability to add in alternative text. And I did look at that in an earlier section. Alternative text refers to how would this chart be described when it is being read by a screen reader. So a person who has a disability, and this particular person with a disability would like to interpret this chart, he or she would rely on alternative text to describe this particular chart. So to add an alternative text, it's much easier than before. What used to be in the previous versions of Excel, you'd have to right-click Format Chart Area, go to Size and Properties, and Alt Text would be available here. Now what you can do is you can just simply right-click on the chart. We have an option here called Edit Alt Text, right? And it pops up with a pane on the right-hand side. How would you describe this object and its context to someone who is blind? So we can say over here, this is a clustered column chart showing employee performance per month. Right, so you want to just put a few words or sentence like that, and it gets saved as soon as you close it, and as soon as you push the save button. So the person who has a disability would be able to read this chart just like how we would read it. It's now just being explained in words rather than being able to, so instead of seeing it physically in front of your screen. So that concludes everything to do with charts. And that concludes just in time that we have completed the entire MO200 Excel exam series. So this will be put up onto YouTube. I do suggest that you go through each of the videos once again, take some time to prepare, don't rush this. In my webinar on 13th of August at around 4 o'clock South African time, I'll be talking about the Microsoft Office Specialist certifications. And I'll also be talking about how do we prepare for the exam. What do I need to know when I would like to register for the exam? So those details I wanted to include in these videos, but since I'm doing a separate webinar for that, I'll incorporate all of that inside there. If you do miss that webinar, not a problem. It will be available as a recording afterwards, and it will be distributed out to everybody. But other than that, thank you for attending this exam prep series. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're not doing it for the exam, I hope you learned a lot of new things. And I look forward to seeing you in the next exam prep series for the MO201 exam for the Excel Expert series. So we can have a look at what other functionality does Excel provide for me to deal with my data.